Chapter 2 Looking Glass. A horrific loud roar rang in the girl's ears and forced her awake in fright. Her heart pounded against her ribcage. Cold air sent shivers up her spine and down her arms. The hairs on her skin prickled as she breathed. Muffled beeps pierced through her ears to the right. The whoosh of pressurized air pushed and squeezed. Heaviness pushed down on her chest, as if weight plunged into her body. She tried to sit up, but her body wouldn't let her. Like an anchor strapped to her head and plummeted into the deep ocean. The ocean, she thought. Flashes of ice and water flickered through her mind. Waves crashed upon waves. She sunk, unable to breathe, unable to swim to the surface. The memory faded as fast as it came, still unable to move but able to breathe. No longer in icy waters, but on land with air so still as death itself. Above her were bright lights that spread across the ceiling, as if the ceiling were light itself. That was all she could see. Her body was still cool, frozen and reluctant to move. The small of her back ached as if a rock stabbed her spine from what she guessed was a bed underneath her. She listened for a voice, a movement, whatever to prove that she wasn't alone. But there was stillness, nothing, and no one. A tear fell down the side of her face and dripped onto the bed below her. Again, she listened. But there were no voices. She figured if she stood all at once, it wasn't laid out to be in her favour. So instead, she attempted to move her fingers. Needles shot through her arm, prickled and stung as she willed her index finger to move. Finally, it did. Then one after the other, each finger wiggled in the air. She moved on to the rest of her body, her toes, her legs, her arms, her jaw, and lastly, her head. She sighed in relief and rolled her neck side to side. She lifted her head and stared at herself. Wires attached from her pale arms, each was a different colour, yellow, blue, and red. 2 hung from each thigh and 1 in her neck. What was this? A white gown covered her body and a bracelet wrapped around her wrist. On it was a tag numbered 180395. Underneath the bracelet was a black inked tattoo of a crescent moon. It burned as if it had been freshly carved. To her left was a large white wall, as well as a wall in front and behind. But the wall to her right wasn't like the others. It reflected her room, reflected each movement like a dream that played out. It wasn't a wall at all, but a mirror, a large mirror that expanded from corner to corner. Strange, she thought. A single bed sat in the middle of the room, and a tray with a glass water bottle next to it. Water! She scrambled for the bottle. Her legs flailed off the bed and to the ground. The wires ripped from her body, but she suppressed the pain. She uncorked the bottle and gulped it down. It calmed her inflamed throat as she gulped it back quickly. The girl sighed in relief. Her eyelids felt heavy. She wanted to sleep. There wasn't an inch of her body that didn't hurt, or that was stiff or numb. Her head dipped towards the ground, but a loud roar rang in her ears and she jolted upwards in fright. What was that? She knew she heard it when she woke, but there was nothing in the room that could be the host of it. The girl rubbed her eyes and glanced around in exhaustion. Her eyes trailed from wall to wall. This place was unknown. The smell, the air, and the sound of pressurized air that squeezed and pulled. Where am I? She pushed to her feet and took a step towards the large mirror. With it, her reflection followed. Except it was a reflection she did not recognize. Brown locks of hair fell loosely at her shoulders. Fair olive skin covered her body and deep brown eyes that she swore flickered gold. The girl rubbed her eyes in disbelief and stared back. It must have been a trick of her mind because it was blank now and only held a bottomless brown. She lifted her hand and her reflection did the same. She trailed her fingers along the cheeks and jawline. The reflection followed. Even the oiliness of her face against her fingers was strange. This was not her body. In front of her stood a stranger, someone she didn't recognize. Who was she? It was dark before she woke. Then, a crack of lightning and a roar so malicious it still chilled her to the bone. There had to be a door around, a way out. Maybe she could ask someone. Her heart beat faster as the quiet of the room invaded her and the walls closed. She paced forward and pressed her fingers against the cool wall for an exit. There was no clear visible sign of a door, no handle, no knob, no latch. Her body ached with sharp pain the further she walked. There was no use, apart from the mirror, her bed, and the tray with an empty bottle of water. It was a white, doorless room. A beep rang in the background. The girl tensed and turned her head over her shoulder. Where did that sound come from? She followed it, the way the moon did the sun. She feared her legs would cave in at any second, but she held herself steady. It led her back to the mirror she stood in front of moments before, and the beeping stopped. The girl frowned in confusion. She could have sworn it came from here. She didn't know how or why, but she knew it was in the mirror somewhere, like rippled water. Her reflection changed and moulded into emerald eyes that stared in fear. Her hair straightened into short strands of ebony that licked the tip of her throat. The girl rubbed her eyes again. This couldn't be possible. It wasn't until she lowered her arms and the reflection did not follow that she realized it was someone on the other side. A man, and he stared at her. She wasn't alone, but the wide, jade-eyed man stared in fear. Why? She didn't understand. She opened her mouth to speak and forced a hello. Silence escaped instead of her voice. Her fingers pressed against the mirror to steady her unsteady legs. Ice started to grow underneath her touch. Little frosted spikes hardened and cracked as she stared. Where am I? The more she tried to talk, the more painful her throat burned. No sound came from her mouth, no matter how hard she tried. Her arms shook against the mirror. Please answer me, she begged. But he just stared. He looked no older than 22. She watched as the green-eyed man breathed in and sighed. His head bowed to a remote that spun between his fingers nervously as they hovered over a red button. What was that supposed to do? Whatever it was, the girl knew it meant no good. The man hesitated for a while and left his finger hovered in the air, until finally he shook his head and pushed. With the click of a button, green smoke filled the room and trickled towards her through hidden vents. She looked at the smoke, then back at him. The unsure twitch in his face vanished. Now he stared her straight in the eyes, brows furrowed, his lips tight, without a hint of remorse. The green gas choked, like the walls caved in and swallowed her with thick, impenetrable fumes. It wafted up her nose and trickled down her throat, tightened and inflamed the inside. She coughed violently. Her legs shook beneath as she fell with a loud thump. A diamond of light peered through the green gas, and in the middle of it were two silhouettes. The girl blinked through teary eyes to see that it wasn't a diamond of light at all, but a door, a way out. Through the green gas appeared two people, both dressed in white coats that sunk to their ankles. One man, one woman, both with gas masks that covered their faces. A metal tray rattled through the room and stopped before they reached the girl. Unable to move from the effects of the gas, she lay still on the cold floor. Fingers wrapped around her arms on either side and lifted her till her feet dragged on the ground. Her head drooped and bobbed along as they carried her back to the bed. She sprawled across the bed in pain from fingers that pushed into her tender skin. The man fled from her side into the metal tray. His hands floated over it as he inspected the instruments. After a moment, he plucked a silver needle from its bed. Her heart started to race and pounded in fear and rage. She may not have known her name or where she was, but she did know one thing. Whatever was in that syringe was not good. Her face burned when the man stepped towards her, needle in hand. She shook her head. If she screamed, would they stop? Then she could escape through the door. The door. Her eyes wandered where the man and woman entered not moments before. She expected a light, a crack of freedom, a glimpse of hope that there was a way out. But there was emptiness. Emptiness and a white wall, sealed where the door once was. She missed her chance. The needle pierced in her neck and the liquid flowed through her veins like ice. Once pulled from her skin, the needle was placed back onto its bed, and the twosome scrambled back. Her heartbeat slowed and her shoulders sunk towards the ground. The green gas vacuumed out through the vents it entered until none lingered in the room. Then, and only then, did the man and woman remove their gas masks. They were named Phoebe and Metis, the girl guessed from the name tags that were sewn on their white coats. They looked similar, like brother and sister, both with black eyes, blonde hair, short and stout. Phoebe and Metis stood with their hands crossed in front of them and waited. But for what? A hiss came from the wall, and with it a light. The door, the way out. It was no use. She was weaker now than ever before. The clatter of shoes clicked through the room. Her vision had blurred from the poison that flowed through her veins. She could still make out the fear in both Metis and Phoebe's eyes as someone stood through the door. The girl blinked once, and they were gone, along with the chance of her freedom. The room fell silent. Not even the shuffle of feet or a lone breath sounded. A hazy black smudge painted the wall where the door once was. It took a second before she realized it was a person. They stood still, steadfast and stagnant. Her mind started to drift in and out of consciousness. Darkness, then light, heat and cold. The person that stood in front of her came closer and closer each time she passed out, until finally they knelt beside the bed. Fingers wrapped around her arm. They were gentle, unlike the bruised clutch of Phoebe and Metis. "Don't worry, I don't want to hurt you," the person whispered. He had a British accent, and though she didn't remember anything, she was glad she knew at least that much. Somehow, through her spinning head, she heard him, though she wasn't sure if she heard him right. He didn't want to hurt her. When mere seconds before she was gassed, poked, and now paralyzed to the table. Her stomach threatened to bring up anything she had inside of her, but by the hollow of it, there was nothing. Her arm flipped over till her palm faced the ceiling. "It's a little prickle, okay? It'll be gone in a few seconds." Prickle? What did he mean? What would prick? A sharp burn pierced at her arm. It was cool against her skin. More needles. What was the purpose of this? A gentle stroke of fingers moved the hair that lay in her face away. "It's okay, you're okay, it'll kick in soon," the man breathed. What would kick in soon? More pain? But she was wrong. The pain didn't follow. Instead, clarity did. Like curtains pulled open before a show, it was all clear now. No longer did the walls spin or numbness tickle her arm. No longer did her head weigh with a mass amount, or her heart beat at the run of snails. Instead, a room, a bed, a looking glass, and a man did. The man behind the mirror. Hello everybody, if you guys liked this chapter of Where Creatures Hide, then make sure you subscribe to my emailing list so that you can stay updated, so that you can stay tuned in for when the last, Hello everybody, if you guys liked this chapter of Where Creatures Hide, then please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, because there will be the third chapter going up within the next week on this exact day, which is a Wednesday, I believe. So yeah. Also, if you're not already signed up to my mailing list, then definitely do that. It's pretty simple. All you have to do is put your email address in and click subscribe, and then you can get like some great deals. Yeah, have a great day. It's really late. I should really go to bed. Good night.